G'day, it's the Arrow here. Very excited for my opening segment of straight shooting. So as I was talking about in the cricket, I'm incredibly frustrated and really annoyed, confused, disappointed that the Australian selectors thought it was a good idea to drop Nathan Lyon. And I thought, you know, it's India. It's far from a spinner's paradise. So I thought I'd do a little bit of research on how in past tours Australian spinners have performed in India, and it's pretty supportive of my thoughts that Lyon shouldn't have been dropped because, surprise, surprise, spinners struggle in India. Yes, okay, the pitches in India do turn, but I mean Indian spinners are used to it a lot more. The pitches in Australia are a lot different. In Australia, you have to pitch the ball, I guess, a little shorter, but in Australia, you rely a lot on variable bounce as one of your weapons rather than turn. So you're looking to pitch the ball in different areas. While in India, it's very dusty, turns the weapon rather than the bounce. You've got to pitch the ball very full. So I think that's one reason why Australian spinners traditionally struggle. And the other reason is Indian batsmen just play spin very, very well. That's what they get taught from when they're young. The majority of bowling they face throughout their careers, starting from when they're young right through their careers, is spin bowling. So I thought, as I said, I'd dig up some figures for some old tours. So let's start with all the way back in 1956-57, where we had the great Richie Benaud as our main spinner. And back then, he took 23 wickets in that series with an average of 16, which is, yes, incredibly good. But in saying that, in 56-57, that was in the first couple of years of India playing Test cricket. So India's Test cricket team back in 56-57 would be worse than the Bangladesh of today. So you sort of get where I'm coming from. And you've got to remember, it gives Richie Benaud some credit. Arguably, he'd be third, fourth best spin bowler to ever bowl for Australia. Richie again dominated in the 59-60 tour of India, where he took 29 wickets at 19. Mind you, that was a 5-match series, so that's why he took that many wickets. Things start changing a little bit as we get into the 60s and 70s. Australia's team probably isn't as strong, and India start developing some solid batsmen. By the end of the 70s, they've got batsmen in their team, you know, like Dilip Vengaskar, and of course Sunil Gavaskar, people like that. And then you've got people like Kapil Dev and Azharuddin who come in the 80s as well, very strong batsmen who are good players of spin. So in the 64-65 tour, we had Tom Beavers as our main spin bowler. He took 11 wickets at 24, still reasonably respectable against an Indian side that's slowly building. And then you get to the 1969 tour. Now, this Indian side was a very good bowling side that they played against in 69. Had spinners like Irupilli Prasanna, who's probably arguably one of the best Indian spin bowlers ever. Statistically, he'd be up there with Kumble and Harbhajan. But our spinner was Ashley Mallett, and Ashley Mallett is probably the second best spinner Australia's ever had. He's certainly rated very highly by people who played in that era. Richie Benaud has huge raps on Ashley Mallett, always talks himself down compared to Ashley Mallett. And Ashley Mallett took 28 wickets in that series at 19. Again, a very strong performance. You're probably thinking to yourself, this guy's got no idea what he's talking about because all these figures are good so far. Richie Benaud and Ashley Mallett, solid bowlers, Indian side, not very strong. So now we start finding ourselves in a little bit of trouble because in 1969 was actually the second last time we won a series in India. So things are about to get a bit ugly. So we moved on to 1979, 1980. So 10 years later was the next tour of India, late 1979. And we picked 3 spinners for that tour. Peter Sleep, he only played in 1 test. He didn't take a wicket. There you go. Ray Higgs, he took 14 wickets at an average of 50. The thing is, though, that I'd like to point out here is that's pretty similar to what Nathan Lyon's averaging after 1 test in India. The thing is that the selectors back then persisted with Ray Higgs. He kept playing all the tests in that series. And the same with Bruce Yardley, who was more of an all-rounder, but still a spin bowler and a solid one. And he took 10 wickets at 38. So the Indian team had definitely improved by 1980. They were a pretty serious team, particularly on home soil. But the Australian spinners began to struggle. but they kept getting picked. And I guess you need to define what struggling is in India. I think if you're averaging under 40 with the ball in India, you're still doing a pretty good job against their batting lineup. 86-87, very famous series, drawn series with the famous tied test. Greg Matthews. Now, Greg Matthews had good figures in that series, 3-test series. He had 14 wickets at 29, but I think if you ask Greg Matthews himself, he would say that was probably the high point of his career. Greg Matthews was a good, solid cricketer, but his career average was around 40, so that was a bit of an anomaly for him. And Australia really overperformed in that series. Ray Bright only took 8 wickets in 3 tests and took it in an average of 36, which is so-so, but again, he played all the tests. Another pointer there. Wysett Lyon picked again. 96, we went over to India, only played a one-off test, and we got smashed in that test. And in that test, Brad Hogg took 1 for 69 and got carded at 5 and over. And Peter McIntyre took 3 wickets, but took them at got about 3 for 120. So hypothetically, he averaged 40, got smashed. 97, 98, India killed us 2-1. Tendulkar batted unbelievably, smashed us all over the park. Anil Kumble killed us with the ball. He took something like 25 wickets in 3 tests then, and some sort of ridiculous average of 15. Now, our spinners, we had Gavin Robinson. He played all tests. He took 13 wickets at 34, but that was very heavily inflated with most of his wickets coming in the last test match. In the first 2 test matches, he got smashed everywhere. And Shane Warne, the greatest spin bowler in the history of cricket in that tour, took 10 wickets at an average of 54. You see what I'm saying? India's not an easy place to bowl, even for the great Shane Warne. And he only took 10 wickets at 54, but he played all 3 tests. They stuck with him. 2001 series, one of the greatest series ever. Brilliant series over there in India. They beat us 2-1. Their team in 2001 was crack. Like, we're bowling at a batting lineup that includes Dravid, Laxman, Tendulkar, Ganguly, and that's where Harbhajan Singh came of age as a bowler as well. And his figures in that series are incredible compared to our spinners. Colin Miller only played 1 match, and he took 6 wickets in that match. It was a pretty good effort, but he was expensive. He took them at over 30. While Warney played all the matches. Again, 10 wickets at 50, smashed everywhere. They kept with him, they kept sticking with him, and he didn't bowl that badly. The Indian batsman just played him beautifully. 2004, that brilliant win that we had over in India, 2-1. And Warney in that series took 14 wickets, only averaged 30. Not great, but solid enough. They stuck with him. And then, it gets pretty ugly in 2008. We were flogged then. I think a lot of that has to do with Cameron White getting picked as their lead spinner. He played 3 tests of the 4 and took 5 wickets at 68. But for some reason, they hung on to him for 3 tests. Now, there's someone who possibly should have been dropped. Well, he shouldn't have been picked from the start. But if they hang on to him for 3 tests, why can't they hang on to Nathan Lyon? Jason Frazier played that last test, and as you know, very famously took 12 wickets on debut, but he took them at something like 6 and over. And then in 2010, when we played a 2-test series and got hammered 2-0, Nathan Horrocks, his test career ended because of that. He only took 6 wickets at 65, but he still got to play both matches, and then he got dropped for the Ashes, which I thought was ridiculous. Again, it's his first tour to India. Ricky Ponting didn't help him, told him to bowl differently, gave him stupid fields. That's when you knew Ponting's time as captain was up. And in the return Ashes series that was straight after that, for some reason, our friend Xavier Doherty got picked. We all know what happened there. Took 3 wickets at some sort of average close to 200. And then we're up to the tour now. Nathan Lyon's combined figures in the first test were 4 for 244. And he got hit around 5 and over, happened to plenty of people. And so far, that means he's averaging around about 60. But my point is, looking back at these figures, is particularly the guys with bad ones, Warne, Robertson, Higgs, Yardley. The Australian selectors persisted because they just knew that the Indian batsmen would play as a spin. Why the Australian selectors aren't going to persist with Nathan Lyon, I really don't understand. He's bowling to some great batsmen. It's his first series in India. Yes, he's got a lot to learn and he can improve, but he's got so much more he can offer us than Xavier Doherty. Xavier Doherty has played 2 test matches before he got picked for the second test and took 3 wickets. And his performance in the second test over in India was rubbish, awful. Nathan Lyon bowled better than him, took more wickets than him. Doherty was more tidy. That's because he bowls darts. So my point there is India. It's not an easy place to bowl, no matter who you are. If you're the great Shane Warne, it's difficult. Nathan Lyon was harshly dealt with. If I'm an Australian selector, he goes straight back into the side in my Harley, and he gets given the chance to play out the series, and should be the first spinner picked on our Ashes tour.